Welcome back, and we're joined live in the studio now by Henry Wotherspoon, a candidate for the Fortuna City Council election next week. Mr. Wotherspoon, thank you so much for joining us on Redwood News.
Thank you for having me.
Well, it's a real pleasure. Now, Henry, what relevant experience will you bring to the council if you're elected?
I think the main things that I'll be bringing with me are my experience as a business owner. From the age of 15 back in high school at Eureka High, I participated in the Innovate Business Challenge for 2 years in a row. And I ended up winning my senior year, and from that point I ran my own business for several years, and I'm still running my own business to this day. So I bring with me a lot of expertise, first-hand expertise from managing that business, you know, from a budget standpoint and from a dollar standpoint, being around money and knowing how to manage it. So I think I have the tools needed in order to help manage the city and bring Fortuna into the spotlight a little more.
Now, what are the biggest issues you believe Fortuna citizens face?
Well, the most pressing issue is definitely the energy issue. It's going to really hinder our future development plans, and as a direct result, that's going to hinder the economic growth of the city. I also think there are a lot of other issues that tie in with the economic growth of the city besides just the energy issues, and those are things that Fortuna really needs to pay attention to here in the future.
Now, following on from that, what will be your top priorities for your constituents if you are elected?
I think some of my top priorities are definitely involving the younger generations more. Fortuna has a majority of senior voters, you know, through Humboldt. We have a pretty big majority of senior community, so it's important to both involve the younger generation as much as we can while also still keeping in mind the senior community, because, you know, respect for the elderly and, you know, making sure that everybody is taken care of is a big part of the City Council's job.
Now, part of the role of a council member is obviously working collaboratively with your fellow councillors. How will you attempt to reach agreement when you don't share their views, or they don't share yours?
You know, that's a good question. I think what it really comes down to is understanding where the other council members' opinions and views are coming from and trying to meet somewhere in the middle. If we're not budging one way or the other, then compromise is really the only solution. I think butting heads and, you know, just standing your ground on topics that are controversial and, you know, something that the other council members might disagree on is ultimately a waste of time rather than, you know, sitting down, shaking hands, and talking it out.
Now, part of the pay structure for councillors does make it almost certainly a part-time role. So how will you balance your day job and your other life with your council responsibilities? Being a small business owner, I essentially make my own hours. So that gives me a lot of freedom and flexibility when it comes to community involvement. And that's one of the main reasons I decided to pursue a council position. I have the option to set aside the time when it's needed to be involved in the community and do my part. Now, it's a very important role in our community, but there have been issues with similar office holders in recent years, and I'm talking nationally as well as locally. How would you personally avoid falling into any similar negative position?
You know, ultimately, what it comes down to is having a good moral compass, I think. From my standpoint and seeing the other candidates and, you know, politics on a national scale, a lot of it is really just poor morals almost. Ultimately, you have to treat people like people, and being kind and considerate of others is such a big part to play. And I think a lot of times those basic human morals are set aside when they really shouldn't be.
Now, we've only got about a minute left, I'm afraid, Henry. If anything, what would you like to share about your personal background and interests that you think viewers should know about you?
Like I said, I've been involved in local business. My family has as well for a very long time. What I really want to do is kind of bridge the gap between generations, because I think there's an inherent disconnect between the senior community and the younger generation, and that's no fault on either part. I think it's, you know, something that's kind of built up through the ages with our society. So I think it was really important to kind of garner that respect with the senior community while also getting the younger generation involved.
Well, I'm really sorry, Henry. We are out of time, as always. We're running out of town. Thank you so much for joining us on Redwood News, and of course we'll be right back after this short break.